The morning sun crept gently through the tinted windows of a glass-paneled office in the suburbs of Chicago. It was early spring, and the scent of dew still lingered in the cold air. Inside the sleek, modern building of Pansoft Technologies, workers filed in with lattes in hand, faces glued to glowing phone screens, fingers scrolling through unread emails. Pansoft wasn't just any software firm. With clients across North America and parts of Europe, they had made a name for themselves in automated cloud infrastructure, banking APIs, and real-time cybersecurity tools. Their culture was elite yet efficient: sharp suits, standing desks, filtered air, and code that never slept. Every desk buzzed to life by 8:45 a.m. Monitors blinked on. Team leads fired off Slack messages. The hum of routers, fan-cooled server cabinets, and keyboard chatter created a rhythm, the sound of organized chaos. But at 9:13 a.m., everything changed. The first signed senior DevOps engineer Malcolm Green was the first to notice it. He leaned forward, squinting at his terminal. His script, an automated patch deployment, had stalled halfway. "That's odd," he muttered, rerunning the command. Nothing. His brow furrowed. He refreshed his connection to the server node. Connection timed out. 2 desks away, Aria, a QA analyst, blinked at her screen. Every test suite was throwing fatal exceptions. At first, she thought it was just Jenkins acting up again, but then, "Hey," she called to Malcolm, "you seeing this too?" Within minutes, murmurs echoed across the office. Something wasn't right. The failure cascade. At 9:22 a.m., a core firewall module reported an error. It wasn't just down, it was completely unreachable. IT support lead Jason Venter attempted a direct reboot via the internal interface. Cannot resolve hostname. Try internal routing? Already did. DNS is gone? And then came the big one. At 9:28 a.m., the entire database cluster went offline. All project files, internal tools, client-facing dashboards, everything froze. Even the security badge readers started blinking red. An intern tried to open a software IDE, only to be greeted with, "License server unreachable. Please contact your administrator." Every screen across the office began glitching, freezing, or going black entirely. People started standing. Conversations stopped. Panic started. Breakdown. The conference rooms filled with raised voices. Managers began pacing. CTO Derek Lim arrived from the top floor, still chewing the last bite of his breakfast burrito. "What's happening?" he demanded. No one could answer him. The infrastructure logs showed anomalies: suspicious kernel calls, unexpected memory leaks, and signs that systems had either been tampered with or were rejecting valid access. The servers had, in a way, turned against themselves. Jason tried restoring a redundant node from yesterday's backup drive. Even that failed. By 10:11 a.m., a single word gripped the office like a vice: hack. The rising panic. By noon, the office had descended into chaos. Phones rang unanswered. Clients were being pushed into voicemail. Internally, Slack and email were dead. The support center in India couldn't get into the shared portals. Engineers were logged out of their own admin panels. A cyber attack? A rogue employee? A supply chain malware injection? Theories flew like arrows. No one had the answer. In the server room, a row of terminals blinked dimly in the dark. Status lights blinked amber and red. People whispered that this could be the end of Pansoft as they knew it. Meanwhile, in silence. At that very moment, in the back hallway near the maintenance closet, a quiet young girl walked beside a mop bucket. Her name was Emily. She wasn't an employee. She wasn't even supposed to be here. Just a kid. Just someone's daughter. Small backpack, simple clothes, a few stickers on her second-hand Chromebook. No one paid attention to her. No one ever had. But that was about to change. While adults ran back and forth in a high-stress loop of system diagrams, ping tests, and fire drills, a different story was quietly unfolding just outside the glass double doors of the server room, a place most employees barely noticed, but where the heartbeat of the company lived. Emily, 11 years old, was crouched beside a vending machine that had eaten her dollar. She tapped the buttons twice more, then gave up. She turned back toward the janitor's closet where her mom, Martha, was gathering her supplies. "Can I sit somewhere quiet till you're done?" she asked. Martha, frazzled from cleaning coffee spills left by stressed-out staff, nodded absently. "But don't touch anything, sweetheart." Emily, obedient but curious, wandered down the hallway. She'd been here a few times before, when school was closed and her mom had no choice but to bring her along. She knew not to speak to the suited-up people who barely looked up from their monitors. But today felt different. The silence in the server room was almost holy, a soft, mechanical hum that pulsed like the quiet beat of a sleeping giant. Among the blinking LED lights and stacked server racks, a stillness hung in the air, untouched by the chaos unraveling in the offices above. Emily stepped in, small and unnoticed, as though she were entering a place forbidden and sacred. Her shoes made barely a sound on the tile floor. No alarms went off. No one yelled. No one noticed her at all. And maybe that was why she was the only one who could save them. She didn't mean to get involved. She had just come with her mother, Martha, the cleaning lady everyone at Pansoft walked past, barely noticing. Emily had always been quiet, curious, and content with staying invisible. She carried her old, sticker-covered Chromebook everywhere, using it for school assignments and games when her mom worked late. But that day, her school was off, and her mother had brought her along because she couldn't afford to leave her at home alone. Emily had waited in the break room, reading, watching, until her curiosity got the better of her. Something about the atmosphere in the building felt wrong. People were shouting, phones were ringing and going unanswered. She'd never seen adults so frantic. When she peeked through the frosted glass hallway, she saw people running with laptops, some with tears in their eyes, and others yelling words she didn't understand. Things like kernel panic and full-stack failure. Still, no one looked at her. And so, with her small backpack on her shoulders and her worn-out sneakers padding silently beneath her, she drifted toward the only place she remembered being quiet: the server room. The door was half open, just enough. Her eyes scanned the room. It looked like something out of a science fiction movie. Wires everywhere, humming machines, lights blinking red and orange. Then she saw it. A terminal. One screen still on, still open. The cursor blinked, waiting. Emily hesitated, her breath caught in her throat. She knew she shouldn't be here. Her mom had told her 1,000 times not to touch anything at the office, but she also knew something else. This wasn't normal. That much was obvious. Something terrible had happened. Something even the adults didn't know how to fix. And Emily, well, Emily knew things. Not everything, but just enough. At home, she'd often watched YouTube videos about computers, sometimes tutorials for her school projects, sometimes random hacker documentaries. She'd learned how to navigate a Linux terminal from an old coding website. More importantly, she'd seen her mom, many times, trying to teach herself computer maintenance after long shifts. Her mother had once been a hopeful IT student, but life had other plans. Emily remembered seeing backup commands in those old notebooks: tar, restore, shh, little scribbles with stars next to them. One of them, she now realized, looked just like the error on the screen in front of her. She looked over her shoulder. No one. With trembling hands, she reached for the keyboard. First, she typed. She didn't know if the directory existed, but it was a logical guess based on what she'd seen in school and her mom's notes. The cursor blinked, then accepted the command. No error. Encouraged, she typed again. Bash copy. Edit a list of backup files populated the screen. She saw file names with dates, compressed folders, config backups, one named restorescript.esh. Her heart pounded in her ears. She hesitated only for a second, then typed nginx copy edit. Nothing happened at first, then the screen flickered. Text began to scroll rapidly across the terminal, some lines in red, others in green. Then a progress bar appeared. It climbed slowly. 10%, 34%, 56%. And then the machines around her began to whir louder. Fans spun up. Lights changed color. Green replaced red. Emily stepped back. On the terminal, a line appeared. Restore complete. Integrity 98%. System rebooting. Admin restore triggered by Emily. She stared at her name, wide-eyed. In the very next moment, she heard voices. Louder. Closer. Footsteps running. She ducked behind the nearest rack just as two system administrators came bursting in, breathless. Wait, are those lights green? One said. Holy, check the terminal. Who ran the restore? The second tech ran to the keyboard, stared, then read aloud. Admin restore triggered by Emily? Who the hell is Emily? Upstairs, screens began turning back on. First one. Then a dozen. Emails started flooding in. Slack connected. Clients began to log back in. Within 5 minutes, Pansoft's entire infrastructure had come back to life. The CTO's office fell silent. Phones stopped ringing. People froze mid-step as the servers, once dead, returned from the grave. And down below, in the shadows, a young girl slipped quietly back out the door, her heart racing with something she didn't fully understand yet. She had just
saved an entire company. It started as a whisper in the IT department. Who is Emily? The name had flashed across the terminal. Not a username, not an admin handle, just a first name. A child's name. No one recognized it, but what mattered more was what had happened after. Systems were back. Email was flowing. Internal tools worked. The server architecture had reinitialized itself perfectly, as if someone, in the middle of the chaos, had pulled the right lever in just the right way, and vanished. For a few stunned moments, the entire company stood still, each person staring at their own screen, unable to believe it. Then, the voices rose. Some cheered. Others ran to inform their departments. A few skeptical engineers searched logs again, as if doubting the miracle had really happened. In the hallway just outside the break room, Emily was trying to blend back into invisibility. She sat on a chair, holding her small backpack tightly in her lap. Her mother, Martha, rushed in, looking worried, eyes wide. "Emily," she said quickly, crouching in front of her. "Where were you? Are you all right?" "I'm okay," Emily whispered. "You didn't touch anything, did you?" Emily hesitated. Before she could answer, a security guard approached. Behind him, the director of operations, Mr. Raymond, followed with a deep, unreadable expression. Martha stood protectively in front of her daughter. "Is something wrong?" The director looked at both of them, confused more than angry. "We're not sure yet," he said. Then his gaze softened. "Your daughter, was she anywhere near the server room?" Martha's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. She might have wandered close. I was just finishing mopping the east wing. She knows not to." "I saw the door open," Emily said suddenly, her voice small but clear. "I went inside." Both adults looked at her. "It was already logged in," she added. "I didn't know it would actually work." The director blinked. "Wait. What did you do?" Emily looked at her shoes. "I ran a restore script. There was a file named restorescript.sh in the backups folder. I just tried it." "You just tried it?" Raymond repeated. "You're 11. How do you even know how to do that?" "My mom taught me some stuff. And I watch videos. We use Linux at school." For a second, the director didn't say anything. Then he turned to the security guard. "Get the CTO and the boardroom. Now." Word spread quickly. Within 10 minutes, Emily and her mother were escorted, not out, but in, into the large conference room where senior executives gathered. Big glass table, leather chairs, projection screens still flickering with incident reports. The CTO, Derek, stared at the girl like she was a hallucination. This? This is the Emily? He asked. Emily sat nervously beside her mother, clutching her backpack. The room felt like it was spinning. She accessed the server, said the admin who had been in the room moments after the restore. The command history matches, timestamp aligns. It was her. The CEO arrived next. He was a tall man with gray in his beard and eyes that rarely blinked during meetings. He looked at the girl, then looked around the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "it appears our systems were not saved by our security protocols, not our automated recovery tools, and certainly not by our vendors." Everyone was silent. He gestured toward Emily. "They were restored by the daughter of our cleaning staff?" Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Someone whispered, "She saved us." The CEO smiled slowly, then walked over to Emily and crouched beside her, just as her mother had earlier. "What's your name, young lady?" "Emily." "Well, Emily," he said, "do you know what you did today?" She looked at him, unsure how to answer. "You brought a company back to life," he said. "You reminded everyone in this building that knowledge doesn't always come with a job title or a badge. Sometimes it sits quietly, watching and learning, until it's needed." Martha's eyes filled with tears. The room applauded, not politely, but thunderously, loud enough to echo down the hallway and make others stop what they were doing. By now, dozens of employees had gathered outside the glass walls, peering in. The CEO stood up and turned to the CTO. "I want 2 things done by tomorrow. First, I want that restore script reviewed and properly documented. Second, I want us to establish an internal initiative. Mentorship, access, training, something for kids like Emily." "She's only 11, someone said. "And already more helpful than some of us in here," he replied with a grin. He turned to Emily again. "Would you like to come back tomorrow?" "Maybe," she said shyly. "Can I bring my laptop?" The room laughed. The CEO beamed. "You can bring anything you want." That afternoon, Emily left the office, walking beside her mother, holding her hand. She didn't fully understand what she had started, but the spark had lit. By the next morning, her story had spread to every department. Someone had posted a photo of the terminal with her name on it. Others started calling her the backup kid. A few even asked if she could teach them what she knew. In a place full of engineers, IT professionals, and data specialists, a child had done what no one else could. And she hadn't done it for money, or power, or recognition. She did it because the door was open, the cursor was blinking, and someone had to try. The following morning, the office didn't look the same. Not because the walls had changed or the desks had moved, but because everyone inside them looked at each other differently. Something invisible but vital had shifted. Where there had once been hierarchy, now there was humility. Where there had been rigid structure, now there was curiosity. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a quiet little girl had become the pulse of an awakening. Emily arrived again at Pansoft, this time not through the back entrance like before, but through the front door, walking beside her mother, who now held her head a little higher. People smiled when they saw them. Some stopped to wave. One man offered Emily a chocolate bar. Another held the elevator open and said, "She's the reason we still have jobs." It was like the company had adopted her as something more than a guest. Not quite an employee, not quite a mascot, but something far more significant. A symbol. When she entered the main conference room that morning, it was already full. But this time, they were waiting for her. A banner hung loosely over the projector screen. Pansoft Mentorship Initiative for the Innovators of Tomorrow. The CEO stood near the window, speaking to a few board members. When he saw her walk in, he excused himself and approached with a smile. "Emily," he said warmly. "Good. You came back." "I brought my laptop," she said, opening her backpack. "Perfect," he replied. "But today, we want to talk first. We have something to show you." She followed him to the head of the table, where a chair had been reserved just for her. Her mother was offered tea and seated beside a few of the HR leads. Emily sat down and looked around at all the screens. And then the presentation began. The CTO, who had once looked puzzled by her presence, now stood proudly and clicked to the first slide. "This," he said, "is not just a new program. It's a new mindset." On the screen appeared a graphic titled "Pansoft and Friends," and underneath, pictures of smiling children in classrooms, workshops filled with computers, and coding camps with banners that read, "Learn, Building, Lead." He continued, "We're launching a citywide initiative, scholarships for young students, a mentorship program for underserved kids, weekend clubs for girls who want to learn about technology, just like Emily." People applauded. "We're also renaming our tech lounge," the CEO added. "It will now be called the Emily Lab." Emily's eyes widened. She started, voice trembling. I didn't do that much." The CEO knelt beside her chair, just like before. "You reminded us of who we are," he said gently, "of why we built this company in the first place, not just to make money or products or code, but to create solutions. And what's more important than the next generation of solvers?" Emily didn't know what to say. Her mother squeezed her hand. After the meeting, a crowd gathered in the break room for a surprise celebration. There were cupcakes with tiny command line prompts frosted on them, posters of famous inventors and a new one in the middle, a stylized drawing of Emily in front of a blinking cursor. That afternoon, the local news showed up. Microphones, cameras, flashing lights. Reporters asked questions. Emily answered shyly. She didn't like the attention, but her mom stood beside her, helping her with each answer. "How does it feel to be called a hero?" one asked. "I just ran a script," she said. The reporter smiled. "Yes, but no one else did." As the story spread, other companies began calling. Offers were made. Tech podcasts wanted to interview her. A local university invited her to attend a summer coding camp for free. Someone even offered her a small scholarship fund. But Emily stayed grounded. She still did her homework in the evenings, still played games, still asked her mom to pack extra snacks in case someone at school forgot theirs. But at Pansoft, her name became something larger than a restore command. It became the basis for a movement. Each Friday afternoon, Emily visited the new mentorship lounge. Kids from nearby schools came with their own laptops, some borrowed, some beaten up. Pansoft employees volunteered to help. They taught Python, HTML, hardware basics. They encouraged, laughed, explained. And every now and then, Emily herself stood up to show them something new. She wasn't loud, she wasn't flashy, but when she talked, they listened. Because she was one of them. Because she had been in the room when everything fell apart. And she had dared to try something no one else had. By the end of that month, the banner on the main floor was replaced. It no longer said just Pansoft. Now it read Pansoft and Friends, powered by curiosity, inspired by Emily. And below it, in smaller letters, sometimes heroes come in sneakers and carry sticker-covered laptops. Weeks turned into months. The buzz around Emily's story hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown deeper, more meaningful. What began as a strange accident in a tech company had evolved into something far greater. People started calling it the Emily effect. In classrooms around Chicago, teachers told her story before starting computer science lessons. On community boards, her photo appeared with the caption, "You're never too small to make a big difference." But for Emily, the world remained simple. She still caught the school bus with her friends, still doodled in the corners of her math homework, still asked her mother for extra rice at dinner. She didn't feel like a symbol. She didn't want to be one. And yet, she had become a mirror, showing people not who she was, but what was possible. Pansoft transformed. They didn't just add Emily's name to walls and programs. They restructured their hiring process, began offering scholarships, partnered with public schools, built an entire curriculum for kids who had never touched a terminal before. Every Saturday, the office opened its doors to students and volunteers. Some came shyly, barely whispering their names. Others burst through the doors, ready to type. There were no fees, no requirements, just laptops and learning. Emily helped where she could, sometimes guiding a girl through her first if statement, other times just sitting beside a nervous child who didn't know how to ask for help. She never acted like she was in charge, but she was the reason they all were there. One morning, as she entered the office for another Saturday session, she was surprised to see reporters again, but this time not from the local news. A well-known national media outlet had picked up the story and sent a team to document what they called the little coder who changed big business. Their cameras followed her quietly. They filmed her showing a younger boy how to fix a syntax error. They captured the moment she offered her snack to a student who had forgotten theirs. They recorded her mother sweeping quietly down the hallway, still working, though now by choice, not necessity. The documentary aired 2 weeks later. It went viral. And then the emails started. From Brazil, from India, from Kenya. Parents wrote to say their daughters had watched the video and asked for a laptop. Schools asked for copies of the Pansoft curriculum. Small businesses wanted to know how they could replicate the mentorship model. It became bigger than Emily, but she remained the heart of it. That summer, a nonprofit approached Pansoft with a proposal to create regional tech hubs for girls aged 10 to 14 under the brand Emily's Code. The idea was simple. Teach them command line basics, ethical hacking, scripting, and digital safety. Emily was asked what she thought of the name. She shook her head. "It shouldn't be my code," she said. "It should be everyone's." So they named it Code for All, inspired by Emily. And so it spread, from Chicago to Detroit, from Detroit to Austin, from Austin to rural towns where internet was still dial-up, but curiosity ran strong. Everywhere it went, it carried the same spirit. Let kids explore. Let them touch real tools. Let them fail. Let them try again. Let them matter. Now, not later. At the Pansoft headquarters, the server room, once a place of blinking lights and frantic hands, now had a glass window. On the wall outside, a plaque read, "People would often pause and read it. Visitors, clients, even new hires on their first tour. Some would ask, did she really fix the servers all by herself? The guides would smile and answer, she restored something more important than servers." At home, Emily remained unchanged. She still hugged her mom before bed, still stayed up reading about Python libraries she didn't understand yet, still worried about her science grade. But within her, something had solidified. A quiet belief that trying mattered. Even when you're unsure, even when you're small, even when no one is watching. And she began writing. Little blog posts, small tutorials in her own words, sometimes silly, sometimes brilliant. She named her blog, Blinking Cursor. The tagline? If the screen is waiting, that means it's your turn. She didn't know that line would one day appear on T-shirts, coffee mugs, and conference banners. But maybe, somewhere inside, she hoped it might help someone else try. Years passed. The name Emily was no longer just a name at Pansoft. It had become a culture. New employees arriving at the company were told her story on day one. It was no longer just in the plaque or the welcome kit. It lived in how people treated each other, how they tackled problems, how they listened, especially to those who hadn't yet been heard. The mentorship program she helped spark now had chapters across 18 cities. Each Code for All club was filled with stories like hers. Children who had never believed they belonged in tech, suddenly discovering that the command line wasn't a wall, but a door. Somewhere in Michigan, a girl named Nora had created a security patch that saved her school from a data leak. In Nairobi, a 13-year-old named Amina taught herself JavaScript from one of the Emily tutorials and built a small app to help her mom track daily sales at the fruit stall. And in rural Pakistan, a group of girls shared one dusty laptop, each taking turns typing out code snippets from a photocopied Emily blog. They had no internet, but they had will. Back in Chicago, Emily had grown too. Now 17, she was no longer the quiet girl sitting in the back of the server room. She was speaking on panels, designing curriculum, and building her own projects. Still humble, still soft-spoken, but sharper than ever. One autumn afternoon, she stood in the middle of a stadium, not for sports, but for the International Youth Tech Forum. Thousands of students from all over the world had gathered. Lights flashed, cameras rolled, and Emily, in a simple hoodie and jeans, took the mic. She didn't speak like a CEO. She spoke like a friend. "When I was 10, she began, I ran a command I didn't fully understand. And something incredible happened. Not just in the server, but in the way people looked at me, in the way I started looking at myself." The audience leaned in. I wasn't special. I wasn't the smartest in the room. I just tried. She smiled. And I think maybe that's all this world needs from us sometimes. To try. To press enter. Even when we're not sure what comes next. Thunderous applause. Later that night, in the green room, a little girl approached her. She was clutching an old Pansoft sticker, and her eyes sparkled. "I want to be like you," she said. Emily knelt down. "No," she replied gently. "Be like you. And if one day someone says they want to be like you, smile, and tell them to be themselves, too." That night, as she walked out into the cool Chicago air, her mother wrapped a scarf around her neck. "You're tired," she said. "A little," Emily smiled. "But it's a good kind of tired." Her mother nodded. They walked down the quiet street together, past the old Pansoft building, past the benches where she used to wait, past the coffee shop where she once bought a hot chocolate after restoring the servers. It had been years, and yet the blinking cursor inside her, the one that had never stopped waiting, still asked the same question. What will you try next? And Emily still had so many answers.